Sorry about the technical difficulties, but today we are first going to go through some intros about Amplify Asian America for Cut Fruit Collective, Buah Zine. Then we're going to learn about zines, a little bit about the history, how they came about. We're going to have a demo by Buah Zine, and then we're going to go straight into creating our own zines while having fruitful discussions with Cut Fruit Collective. Oops. Oh no. All right, so we are Amplify Asian America, and we are a nonprofit organization. We focus on empowering Asian American youth and young adults to become stronger advocates in voting, civic participation, while we also evolve to address changing needs in our community. In the past, we were called the 2020 Project, and we hosted several online events, very exciting events to get more people registered and ready to vote. Today, we have our programs team thinking about this event, and want to introduce my team or let them introduce themselves. So can we go ahead?
Hi guys, my name is Camly with A3 programs team.
Hello, I'm Marjorie. I'm with the A3 programs team.
And lastly, hi everybody, I'm Nicole by she, her pronouns, and also part of the programs team.
Thank you, Nicole. We're really excited to have everyone here with us today, and we would love to give some space to introduce our partners. So I'm going to give the floor to Daphne with Cut Fruit Collective.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and be a part of this awesome program. And so Cut Fruit Collective, we are a Bay Area based, San Francisco Bay Area based grassroots group. We are currently a fiscally sponsored project, a nonprofit project. And essentially we bring together AAPI creatives to develop either art or some sort of creative project for community care. And so our main goals are to support AAPI artists, amplify AAPI activists, invest in vulnerable AAPI communities, and build coalitions across AAPI communities and beyond. And so I guess I can give a little quick background on how we got started. So originally we were called Save Our Chinatowns, and we were founded back in March 2020 by Oakland-based artist Jocelyn Tsai. And that was really as a direct response to COVID and seeing the devastation that it was having in Chinatown communities and specifically small businesses. And so within a span of, I would say about a year, we raised about $75,000 for small businesses and organizations in both Oakland and San Francisco Chinatowns, and including some other organizations outside of Chinatown as well. And then earlier this year, we decided to kind of shift our focus to actually, provide this form of care, meaning, rallying artists and creatives to help fundraise. We wanted to expand our borders beyond Chinatowns and be able to help support AAPI communities across the Bay. And so we, with that, we wanted to change our name to reflect kind of a broader, or reflect that care that we want. And so, so that's how we came up with the name Cut Fruit Collective. And as hopefully many of you know, cut fruit is like the quintessential love language for so many AAPI, I guess, community members. And so we really love that name and wanted to reflect that out into the world and have that intention in the way that we go about doing community care. So, so yeah, anyways, in terms of how we're related to this particular topic of zine making, back in January, we launched a fundraiser and we actually created a recipe zine in collaboration with 3 Oakland-based or Oakland Chinatown food businesses. So partnering with them to collect recipes, and then we created this zine Actually, I don't know if you can really see it, but you can go on to the next slide. And we created this zine called Have You Eaten Yet? And it was really an amazing collaborative effort, working with artists, designers, community activists to come up with, and small businesses, to come up with a guide to Oakland Chinatown, and also, talking about some of the issues that Oakland Chinatown is facing, aside from, outside of the major COVID impacts. And so yeah, it was a really amazing collaborative effort, and we really had a great time putting it together. We were really moved by the community support that we had with the fundraiser attached to this, and we were able to raise about $18,000, split between the 3 businesses that participated. And it was very rewarding to hear that the businesses actually really were very appreciative of this fundraiser, and actually really needed the funds to be able to survive. And so yeah, we were grateful that we could do that. We're also really excited to have built this community around this zine, and so that's something that I'm really excited to talk more about later in this program. So yeah, thanks again so much for having me.
Thanks, Daphne. I'm excited to dig in more about that story. I'm going to hand it off to Teta with Buah Zine.
Hi everyone, I'm Teta with Buah Zine, and I started Buah Zine in 2018, and it's an online and printed zine about Indonesian heritage and diaspora. So it really invites anyone who wants to connect through their Indonesian heritage, to share their stories, to share what having Indonesian heritage means to them. So I grew up in upstate New York, but I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. I came to the US when I was a baby. And I grew up with, a transient Indonesian community. My dad was a grad student. By the time, I was in middle school, though, a lot of people had, finished their programs, and the common move was to go back to Indonesia. But my parents had the opportunity to stay in the US. They decided to take it. And so I grew up in the US. And yeah, I was mostly, for a good chunk of my life, one of the only Indonesians in the room, certainly amongst my friend group at school. And so when I entered college and I entered a space that had a larger and more, I would say, permanent, Indonesian community here in the DC area, I got to thinking, like, what would it have meant if I had grown up with a more stable Indonesian community? I'm sure I would have come to some conclusions maybe earlier in my life, or had understood things better earlier in my life. So, I was looking around for this sort of space to talk about this sort of diasporic experience, and sort of unpack it and complicate it, and really, question, what does it mean to have Indonesian heritage, and what does it mean to, particularly with my experience, be an immigrant on stolen land, and, not wanting to be a part of sort of this, kind of complicating that immigrant narrative that we see a lot in media of achieving an American dream or something like that. I felt that there was, something more, something complicated underneath that. So, I was trying to find that space specifically through like an Indonesian lens. I wasn't finding it. So I decided to start it in 2018 in the hopes of that, this could just be the start of something, and then hopefully more and more spaces will pop up. And it seems that I think there are. So that's really been nice to see. And so we're entering I say we, it's just me behind the scene, but we're in our, I guess, third year now. So I'm really excited about that. And most of the zine lives online on the website, but every summer I put out a printed version of the zine. And in 2019, I started to go to more like zine fests and like in-person events, just so that people, can say hi and interact more with the zine outside of, the internet. So yeah, truly, like Buah Zine it's open for people who just want to connect with their Indonesian heritage, or maybe they don't want to connect with it, but they have some questions that they want to raise, or want to connect with people that way. So yeah.
Thank you. We are now going to hand it off to Marjorie, who's going to talk more about what is a zine and the history behind zines and a little bit of Asian American history as well.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Zine workshop, and thank you so much, Teta and Daphne, for your wonderful introductions to your organizations. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about setting the foundation of what is a zine, like magazine. We had a conversation earlier about how to pronounce it. So yeah, I'm just going to take you through just a really brief introduction to what a zine is, and looking at how historically Asian American spaces have utilized zines as a method towards political organization. Yeah, so what is a zine? So you can see these two definitions that were attributed to R. Seth Friedman and Stephen Ducombe. First is a small handmade amateur publication done purely out of passion, rarely making any money or breaking even. So you can see a little bit of the traces of what people perceive zines to be. Definitely homemade. Definitely a passion project, because you're not getting paid to do this, or at least that's how it used to be perceived as. And the second is zines as non-commercial, non-professional, and small circulation magazines, in which the creators produce and publish and distribute by themselves. And definitely you can see the DIY component in that definition as well. But just to say that these are two offerings of what zines have historically been seen as, and how a lot of it is like non-monetary gain, a passion project on the side, but definitely not towards the civic engagement, the political mobilization that we can see zines being utilized towards in our contemporary context, as well as historically within Asian American spaces. So just to preface, a lot of my presentation is based off of this really wonderful piece of work. It's more of an academic text, but it's really accessible and easy to read. It's called From Archives to Action: Zines, Participatory Culture and Community Engagement in Asian America. It's by Tom Honma. And you can see Gidra, which is one of the first historical Asian American zines from the movement. But yeah, it's just thinking about like what a zine is and how it has been evolving into what we perceived it to today. You can go on to the next slide. So some examples, if you're a visual learner like me, like what does this actually look like? To the left, you can see Daphne and Cut Fruits Collectives, Have You Eaten Yet zine, and to the right, you can see the physical copy of one of Theta's Buah Zines. I have the one with the dragon fruit in my childhood bedroom. I got a copy of it 2 years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. But definitely, there's a lot to zines that is community driven, and that's part of today's webinar series. And to the lower left-hand corner, you can see these little paper cutouts. I'm not sure if you can zoom in into it, but there's one that says, "Why is my cat crying?" And another is quitting coffee. So some folks have utilized zines as small scribbles and like as ways to express like different topics and ideas, whether it be really serious like voting and community engagement, or or things like short stories and poetry and creative work. So yeah, just some examples. And to the right is Gidra, which is one of my favorite like Asian American zines to research because it is very accessible online, which I'll get to later. But yeah, these are some examples. So one of the main questions of this presentation is going to be about how can we look at zines as a medium and method for Asian American community engagement. As we have heard from Daphne and Theta just a few moments ago, they talked about their beginnings with zines from their foundation, their origin stories, as well as within their communities, whether it be transitioning from Save Our Chinatowns into Country Collective, or creating a space for heritage and so forth. Now we're going to talk a little bit about zines for individual expression, a historical tool for Asian American organizing and fostering community partnerships and community engagement. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about zines for individual expression, about how looking within what is my cat crying, or different topics of interest to ourselves. So I made a zine. I do not have it currently on me, but I drew sketches of the people in my family to give to my sister so she doesn't forget me when I go off to college. My friends have also made zines in the past about different types of fruit in Spanish, so they would remember what it is. So it can be used as a method for individual expression, but also for historical organizing. So you can move on to the next section. So I talked a little bit about this, about the Asian American movement and how that you can see a lot of the zines coming up. And sorry, I'm a little bit distracted and my roommates are in the room currently. But you can see like within the 70s, that there's a lot of publications really coming out within the United States. So with Gidra, I talked a lot about earlier, which I'll be going through a little bit of a deeper dive in the next slide. But you can see the different versions, the different copies, the art on these pages, all really wonderful and expressions of Asian American creativity before Asian America was actually created, or the term itself. So Ion Zine, which is also in San Francisco, very much in conversation with CUNY Street Workshop and so forth. Asian America Journal, which is still ongoing, which is now transitioned into a more academic text. I've read so many articles from Asia Journal that I did not know it actually came up from the Asian American movement. You can see the threads between what is the Asian American community now and its roots in the zine from the 70s. In Bridge Magazine, which is from the Basement Workshop in New York. I know there's a lot of stuff, but also a really pinnacle example of how Asian American creative organizations started up their publications as a way for organizing, getting out their ideas, creating opportunities for exposure for their artists in their community, as well as like promoting like different political ideologies, organizing towards something, and bringing together this community, whether it be far and wide in their local communities as well. Yeah, there's also Yellow Seeds, Roots, Asian American Women, Asian American Authors, an anthology of Asian American writers. So you can see like so many examples of different specific topics, communities, and so forth. But yeah, I also really want to look more into Yellow Seeds in Philadelphia because that's local to me. But yeah, definitely recommend you all to look into zines if you're interested in Asian American history through the specific example of the press and through underground journals. We can move on to the next slide. And as I said earlier, I'm going to go a little bit more into Gidra and Bridge, just because they're some of the best documented examples of Asian American community involvement and engagement within the zine. So GIDRA was born out of UCLA student organizing. As you can see the youth and the power of students within creating zines for community engagement. Yeah, really, definitely, Chris, I understand that. So GIDRA helped define the terms for the Asian American movement, as it focused a lot on the fight for ethnic studies. So the Third World Liberation Front, it was definitely covered within the pages of GIDRA. It was also widely circulated. That was one of the best things about zines. You can print it out and give it copies to your friends, to your peers or comrades and so forth. And after it got out of the student organizing space, it moved on to a more of a third-party publisher, more controversial topics at this time, at least, to include like more of the anti-war movement and like discourses on like third world liberation struggles, like in the Philippines and China and so forth. And definitely still lots and lots of art and poetry and creative writing within these pages. And Bridge Magazine is also very similar. It was based in New York City in the Asian American movement there. And out of the Basement Workshop, if you didn't know, was born out of activists and organizers like Yuri Kochiyama and Phil Nash and so forth, and like emerged from a need of an alternate press during the movement on the East Coast, because a lot of the times, if you study Asian American movement, if you ever study the Asian American movement, you can tell like the two different sides, the East and the West Coast, were very different movements on each side, as well as like the press is never, not never, but like it was a bit more difficult for these communities to communicate, because you're thinking about the 60s and 70s and 80s, the fast communication is not the same. But Bridge Magazine was a really great example as well of a tool for Asian American organizing, as expressed the mission not only bridge Asian America within white America, but to bridge experiences between Asian American groups. But yes, I am a history major. I'm not sure if that shows. I think it does just a little bit. Who has studied the Asian American movement just a little bit too much. Not too much. You can always learn more about Asian American history. But yes, that is it for this slide. So I can go to the next one. And yes, just to wrap up my point, zines can be utilized to foster community engagement. There's also the point that people, that Hamna had made, that zines are often embraced by those of marginalized backgrounds because of their freedom to experiment with different modes of writing, expression, and presentation. And it's really, really accessible. Like I said earlier, you really need a sheet of paper, some scissors, you know, just to cut it, a writing utensil. And it's very personal to distribute. With my anecdote earlier about me making my sister a zine when I went off to college, about myself and my communities, you can really make it special to the person that you're giving to. The act of giving a zine after you put in all your labor into it is really, at least in my opinion, a way to foster that community engagement and like and personal connection. And zines really can be about any topic with any materials. You can use a magazine, you can use the back of a receipt, and so forth. But it, at least in my opinion, and a lot of the scholarship that's around zines, it's a way to really subvert the stigma, subvert the ideas about publications and like writing, how you need to be in a reputable press and so forth. But this, you can create your own work, you can publish your writing in a zine. There's so many now in contemporary history, so many now in the Asian American space. There's Magandang magazine for those interested in Filipinx writing. With Buah Zine, if you're interested in publishing about your own Indonesian heritage experiences. But yeah, so there are lots of different zines up and coming, established throughout the United States and in the diaspora, as well as we are in the Asian American space. So definitely just one way to create community, whether it be across the United States and beyond, as we are with Amplify Asian America. But yeah, that is it for me. And I hope you enjoyed that little historical presentation of what is a zine, how zines can be used for community engagement and so forth. But yes, I added some of the resources that I use, including that really great article. It's hyperlinked, and some of the newer projects of community engagement in zines. But yeah, thank you so much. And this is Marjorie from E3.
Thank you, Marjorie. Everyone, give some love in the chat for Marjorie. I appreciate the foundation that you gave us on the history of zines and highlighting the ties it has to Asian American organizing in general, the accessibility, what it looked like in the past, what it looks like now. It's all incredibly exciting. And I appreciate everyone here today because we're going to be a part of that history by making zines on our own. So that leads us right into our demonstration section. We are going to take a 5-minute break for you all to gather materials and to get settled in, maybe grab some water, a snack. The next section we're hoping is going to be very engaging and conversational. And most importantly, I want to talk about what we need to make a zine. Like Marjorie said, it's super accessible. So basically a writing tool, a pencil or pen or marker, scissors, and any sheet of paper will work. And like Marjorie said, it also doesn't have to be like copy paper. It could be like a receipt or like random notes from your day. And then optional items that are just fun if you have them around: tape and glue, magazines, pictures, markers, paint, stickers. And yeah, so we're gonna set a quick timer for 5 minutes, and we'll see you all in a second here. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I just want to touch on a few things that these slides will be available after this presentation, as well as a recording of this webinar as well. So be on the lookout for that in a follow-up email. And one second here as we're working on some tech. Okay. All right, so here we go with the zine demonstration. I'm gonna hand it off to Teta and they will walk us through how to make our own zines.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, again. I am going to be using this fold out from like a Lush catalog. So I like to do handmade zines. They're kind of a great opportunity to sort of reuse things. If you're, you know, sort of a errant or a part-time writer or creative like I am, where you can't really commit to like a strict writing regiment or strict creativity boost or whatnot. Zines are just like a really great way to have a little creativity in your day. And it's a great way to reuse old materials so that they don't end up in the recycling or wherever. So yeah, here is, again, it's a little bit bigger than like 11 by 8 sort of like copy print paper, but basically it works the same way. And this sort of demonstration, you can definitely look up 8-page or like 1-page zines, really easy to make, and the instructions are available everywhere. So I want this to be sort of like my page where I write things, and this is going to be the highlight of the book. So I'm gonna work with from this side. It'll make sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. Chime in if you have any questions. So the first part is that you want to fold your piece of paper like a hot dog long ways. So make sure it's folded up that way, and make sure you have a really nice crease, a really strong crease, and then open it up again. And then you want to fold it the other direction as a hamburger, and make sure you have a really strong crease that way. And then open it up again. And then this time you'll want to fold in the two sides of the paper into the middle. So it kind of looks like a door. So it should be the two sides that are like the hamburger sides, and then folding it in like a door. So at this point, you want to make sure, all of your creases are nice and strong. And then you'll want to fold the paper in half. So it's going to be like a long accordion style. And so again, I have to make sure that the orientation is right. And because I want the green part to be like the part where I write stuff and I'm working in, I'm making sure that like the catalog part is on the outside. But if you have like paper that you don't care which side, it doesn't really matter. So at this point, you want to make sure that you are pinching the middle part. And so it'll look like a tent if you lie it flat like this, and you want this middle sort of tent part, because this is where you'll grab your scissors, and then, all of the creases that you made, they should be, this sort of clear page sections. And to make it all into a booklet, you just have to cut the middle part here. So just cut down the middle. And then once you've made that cut, make sure you've cut the right side, because then you want to fold down like it's a flower. So again, you have it like a accordion style, you cut the middle, and then you have this cut here, and then you just grab the top and the bottom and then just like fold it down, and it should come out like a flower. And then, yeah, you have an 8-page booklet. I hope that was clear. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat. And then if there was any part that you got stuck along the way, let me know. It should just look like a, yeah. And this is an example of like a finished zine that I made last year. And this was just with construction paper, and I also had old magazines. Ooh, okay, that's good, tall book. That means a lot of space to do a lot of creative stuff. So I think that's good. But yeah, so this is just, markers and old magazines and just like little scribbles, just how I was feeling May 2020. That's how I've taken these handmade zines. And then this is another one that I made. I did the cut wrong, so that's why I had to staple it. So it's only a 4-page zine. But this is also using the Lush cutout or the Lush fold out. And yeah, just using sort of cutouts from the catalog and just writing things there. And I have a zine collection. I have a personal zine collection. I just wanted to share sort of like some of my favorite zines. These are zines from other Indonesian creators. So this is an art zine, and I believe this is just, like photocopy, and it's stapled, down the middle here. And you can just see that it's the Kat Wong is the artist, and it's just, drawings here. It's really great drawings, comics. So that's, one type of zine. Here's another zine from Feby of Reculture Kitchen, and this is a Bay Area based tempeh and like Indonesian food company. So she put out this zine, and it's very personal. Tempeh means a lot to Feby, and so she's just talking about the history of it, or her relationship with it, and here's some recipes in it, a conversation with a relative. And so this is a nice personal zine here. And then here's another one, a bigger format here, but this is also a food related zine, also from a Bay Area based Indonesian organizer. And she is a Tenderloin resident. And so she put this really loving zine out to highlight, the food places that are in her neighborhood. So this is a really nice example as well. And so zines can look in so many different ways, like whatever materials that you have, like you can make a zine. There's a really, there's a low entry point for making a zine. And then here's an example of like my zine. I use a printing company, an online printing company to kind of format the zines. And then I use a local publisher when I need to do events. So this is what it looks like. It has sort of a matte finish here, and then it's full color because I really like, you know, make sure that things are colorful. And so it just has versions of the interviews that are available online in a print format. And then I try to include, you know, exclusive content that isn't in the online version. And yeah, so I can give you a quick look at sort of the platform that I use. I don't have like Adobe Illustrator or I don't know if I can show it now. Oh, I don't think I can show it now. But in any case, I don't have Adobe Illustrator, so I use this program called Bookwrite, which is available through blurb.com. And Blurb is sort of like a self-publishing online company. And that's where I host my zines that you can buy online. If you know you can't make it to Zine Fest or anything, those zines are available there. My zines are also available via Issue, and you can see like the zines for free as a digital issue. So yeah. Oh, let's see. Sorry, let me. Okay. Well, I don't know if that works. Okay, yes. Okay, sorry. Here is, sorry, the sirens are going on. But so here's the program I use. It's called Bookwrite. This is the latest zine that I made. So this summer, I take the photos unless I note in the zine itself. But yeah, all the photos I've taken. So this is a citrusy zine. And yeah, it just takes time to sort of like format the content because I only have like 23 pages really to cram everything in. But yeah, so this is what this program looks like. It's very intuitive. It's super easy. It doesn't have like maybe all of the capabilities of like Adobe InDesign, but it's definitely, I think that it's more accessible because you don't have to like, you know, learn Adobe or anything. And then this is what the zine looks like as a digital zine on Issue. And all of my zines are available online for free. And then this is Buah Zine website. And it's, you know, a simple WordPress sort of blog, and it's very easy to update. I think like online zines are also super, you know, the entry level for that is super accessible as well. So yeah. Take a look at that, and there you have it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and walking us through that. I love seeing the sneak peek into your personal collection. Hope to have that one day soon. And we'll make sure to get these links to your website and to Daphne's Cut Fruit Collective website out to folks after the workshop. And so how the rest of this webinar is kind of going to work is Nicole from our programs team is going to facilitate a conversation between us and Theta and Daphne talking about their own zines, their journey and inspirations, while we can all co-create here, making our own zines. And at the end, hopefully we'll have some time to share out and maybe take a photo. Yeah, so I'm gonna hand it off to Nicole.
Thank you, Camry, and thank you, Teta, for sharing your art. So let me go on to the next slide. On the next slide, I just have a collage of like zines. I think, oops, yes, we're gonna create. We're gonna have a collage of zines just like to glance at for inspiration really quick, like in case you're like, I don't know what to, don't never have like created a zine before. So here's like a quick inspo spread. Credits go to the rightful artists, and we're gonna hop into our first title page. Is everyone ready with their materials and their booklets? All right, here we go. Oh yeah, we have an overview of the themes here. So the first page is the cover page. Then when I say full spread, I mean like the first, like this whole large space here, that first full spread is what environment you're starting in. The second spread will be what seeds you want to plant. We have a fruity growth theme going on here. Our third full spread will be how will you be nourishing your seeds to grow fruitfully. And on the last page will be self-care so that you're healthy to care for your seeds while you're growing, while your seeds are growing. And since we have, just want to let you know that we'll also have about 5 minutes to allocate per page. So if you wanted to come back to your zine later because you're like, oh my gosh, this is not enough time, I just wanted to give you that heads up. Okay, here we go. So we have some ideas here for your front cover. Of course, you want to name your zine if you like. I have some ideas here for you. You can name it Slice and Spice, Slice and Splice webinar. You can make it a punny title. I have some examples here like juicy or fruity manifestations. You can grow roots and advocacy, recipe for growth and advocacy. You don't even have to have a title if you don't want to, but give you some time for that. And I like to date and sign my work of art, so you can do that. And of course, add doodles as you please. Let me see if I can play some music. Please give me a moment.
For those comfortable with sharing, where is everybody starting with like their little zines? Like I use a random piece of coloring book paper. Oh, Priyanka. I love that. It's very colorful already.
I have just regular printer paper, but I, for some reason, have been obsessed with this idea of fruits and not their right colors. So that's a pink kiwi, and I'm working on a purple strawberry.
Large paper shipping envelope. Yes.
Can everyone hear me? Sorry, just double checking.
You're good, Nicole.
Okay, thank you. All right, while we are creating our front covers, I want to ask Daphne, like, how did you come about what you decided to include in your zine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the original intent of the zine that we created, Have You Eaten Yet, was to be a fundraiser for Oakland Chinatown businesses. And so we thought it would be really great. And especially since the majority of the businesses in Oakland Chinatown are food related, we wanted to create a recipe zine. And so we actually went out and, tried to recruit participants, essentially like which food businesses would be willing to work with us on this, willing to share recipes, partner on this essentially. And so we managed to find three businesses that were willing to share their recipes and to also, be the beneficiaries of the fundraiser themselves. And we ended up with this spot called Yuen Hop. They are a noodle, well, they're called Yuen Hop Noodle Company, but they're basically just like a grocery store, a little produce market. And so we worked with them on their lo mein recipe here. And we wanted to make sure they were, simple enough recipes, but also enough to kind of get some folks out of their comfort zone, and to try different things, to buy the ingredients from their stores and things like that. So that was the first recipe. The second recipe is we worked with Greenfish Seafood Market, and we actually came up with a hot pot recipe.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome because so Finny, we actually wrote a little kind of feature on her. Sorry, my background's always cutting in and out, but we wrote a feature article on her as well. She's got quite a story, and her family has long roots within Oakland Chinatown, and so really wanted to showcase what she's been going through, what her business is about, and she also mentioned to us, like, folks love coming to her market to get all their hot pot ingredients, and she happens to have all of it. So in addition to seafood, they sell meat, vegetables, like frozen kind of goodies to put in your hot pot. And so so she gave us a pork bone base broth recipe, and then a classic seafood dipping sauce recipe, which her family also owned a few seafood restaurants in Oakland Chinatown. And so this was like, restaurant quality level dipping sauce. And I can attest it. I tried it myself, and it was really good. So, and then we also kind of went over some ingredients, and we wanted to, help folks feel a little more comfortable leveling up, essentially. And so that's kind of why we called it like leveling up in terms of ingredients, not ingredients that are like we didn't want to make it feel exotic or anything, but something to try, because Finny was saying how like she's noticing like our generation may not be trying as many different things and ingredients, or may not be as interested in trying. And so so we called out some ingredients that are really popular among some generations, and she, for instance, she suggested live conch, which I've never tried, but she has live conch at her market, and she says it tastes really nice and sweet, and like it has a nice texture to it. And so we're really excited to be able to share that. And then let's see, our third participant, Come On Deli. So she's got an amazing story, having been a refugee from Vietnam, immigrating to America, and her first experience landing in the Bay Area, she wanted a banh mi. And so she ended up going to this banh mi store, this banh mi shop in Chinatown, Oakland. And at the time it was Kam Huang. And then about 30 years later, the owner actually offered her, because she wanted to retire, and so she offered on her shop. And so she took over the shop a few years ago, and she's a wonderful part of the community, very, beautiful part of the community. And she's also a vegan. And so she offered us, or she shared her lemongrass tofu recipe, which is absolutely delicious. And she has these amazing lemongrass tofu banh mi's, which I love. And so, anyways, some really amazing stories. And so those were the anchors with our zine. And we wanted to really highlight their stories. And, in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that people were going out and exploring Chinatown. So we got community shout outs from all kinds of folks, and then wanted to highlight some other, so like a brief history of Oakland Chinatown, and then some other, let's see, we also highlighted a partner of ours, Good Good Eats, and what they've been doing within Asian Black advocacy and activism. And so, yeah, it was a collective effort. We collaborated with 6 different artists, and then I wrote most of it just to make it simple, but we also we did some interviews, and we gathered community shout outs as well. So yeah, so that's how we went about doing it. Sorry, long answer there.
No worries. That's just so cool. I love learning all about that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of the most, beautiful part of this, is really hearing all these stories, going out into your community, talking to people, getting to know them, connecting. And that's what I love about creating zines, is, you're sharing knowledge, and oftentimes, at least the way that I like to approach it is I like to make it a community effort. And so, yeah, so that allows me to kind of, play journalist a bit and get out there and get to know folks. So
that is so fun. Oh, wow. All right, we're gonna hop right into our next page now. I feel so inspired and fueled up right now. But our next full spread is, what is the environment we're starting in while we're planting our seeds of advocacy and growth? So I have some prompts here you can include in your first slide, including what does your heritage mean to you, and how does it support you in your immediate circles or communities? How does your environment support you in your work right now? Is it lacking anything, or are there any barriers? Give you some time to process that and brainstorm.
I have a question about when you were approaching Chinatown restaurant owners and whatnot. Were they receptive to the idea of a zine, or did they know what a zine was? Or was it educating people kind of on what the project was,
Yeah, definitely. It was very much having to educate our partners on what it is. Some folks she herself is an artist, so she understood it was an art-based project, and she kind of understood what that meant. But the others, we had to kind of share a bit more. Thankfully, all 3 partners that we worked with, it was a little simpler because they were pretty well versed in English, and so at least they understood English, and we were able to, we didn't have that barrier. But yeah, we had to explain what a zine was, and when when we ended up, giving them copies of it, they were so, surprised and amazed by what it ended up looking like. But yeah, I think there was definitely a bit of a challenge to get folks on board with the project. Despite even like we're offering to fundraise for these businesses, it was still like having to develop trust with each of these partners. That takes a bit of time. We did help. It did help to work with some community partners first, and so in terms of like they were able to kind of put in a good word for us and what we're doing, so that really helped.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm like having minor tech difficulties. Hopefully y'all can still hear and see me.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right, while we're doing, I also have another question. So you mentioned that you are based in Oakland, Chinatown, and we're on like the topic of where we're starting from, or like how our environment is. So I was wondering if you could touch on some of like other key issues that Oakland area may experience or may have inspired your zine creations.
For sure, yeah. So in addition to COVID being like the main kind of pressing topic, we wanted to talk about some of the other issues that Oakland Chinatown is facing. And the big one is gentrification. So I think across, so many cities around the world, if not just America, Chinatowns are actually in threat of gentrification, mainly because they occupy some prime real estate, in urban centers, and that's no different for Oakland Chinatown. And so that is something that we wanted to touch on in the zine, and kind of start exploring what does it mean to basically strengthen and keep a community strong. And so we talked to some folks about, we wanted to make sure that Oakland Chinatown's history was touched on, and that we weren't able to go into a lot of depth, but we wanted to show some of the key historical points of it, which is so common in specifically Chinese American history, is displacement. And so Chinese settlers coming into Oakland right around the gold rush era, and they were pretty much forced to move wherever they tried to settle. And that's something that I've more recently like picked up on, is like anytime there's any sort of like name like China Beach or China Basin or China anything, that means some Chinese people were displaced. And so what Oakland Chinatown right now is, the area that it's located is basically kind of where Chinese people were restricted to, and it's a couple blocks. It's pretty small in comparison to San Francisco Chinatown, but the major difference between San Francisco Chinatown and Oakland Chinatown is that Oakland Chinatown is a living, breathing Chinatown. You'll hear that from residents a lot. It actually, there are residents there. It's really not for tourist purposes. It's really, for the community, and all of the businesses are really there for residents and for the Chinese community around the East Bay. And so it's living, breathing, but that's kind of part of it is what makes it a little bit under threat is that it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have the same safeguards that San Francisco Chinatown does. And so it's like a double-edged sword in having this kind of identity built around San Francisco Chinatown to almost preserve it. Oakland Chinatown doesn't quite have that. And so there is development happening around there. And, you know, when we talked to Finney of the seafood market, she's definitely feeling the pressure from it. And she says a lot of business owners are feeling the pressure from it as well. And so yeah, there's a lot of kind of on the ground issues, which I feel like COVID has only exacerbated in terms of, you know, businesses closing, and, you know, developers coming in and taking over, you know, blocks almost. So that is a you know, an ongoing issue for Oakland Chinatown. And so one of the things that Cut Fruit Collective, we're trying to come up with programming to really help folks really appreciate what's existing right now. You know, that's, and to appreciate that it is a living, breathing Chinatown. So often, I think gentrification, or displacement happens. It can be, you know, a very calculated effort, but it can also be out of ignorance and out of not understanding what this community means to people that are living, or that, you know, that are within this community. And so there's a need to communicate to folks on all ends of like, hey, this is a very special place. This is a very meaningful place. And we don't have to do much to change it. It's just like, you're allowing people to see it for what it is, and to appreciate it for what it is. And I think using art is a very accessible way to do that. And so that's kind of what our mission is right now. We're focusing on it, I guess, this term called placekeeping. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's often using creative means to really, I guess, help folks have a different relationship to a space, to change their relationship, to value it in a much deeper way. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daphne. I'm just gonna hop in here. But I really didn't know much about Oakland Chinatown before your explanation about how the immediate issues in your community have really contributed to the zine. I'm also gonna open up this question to Theta. If you're about like the ways that Buah Zine has also responded to any immediate or pressing questions within your audience.
Yeah, so, you know, Buah Zine is really more sort of like a archival project, I would say, a storytelling project. You know, the question that I ask all of my interviewees is, you know, what does your Indonesian heritage mean to you? And I ask that because I kind of want to have people think about their heritage in, you know, more complex, more meaningful, more nuanced ways, you know, that go beyond sort of like, oh, you know, I wear batik, or, you know, I like to eat Indomie, or, you know, things like that. So just trying to get people to engage in a deeper and more complex way, and, you know, kind of like complicate sort of the thinking behind, you know, like, oh, this, to be an Indonesian, you know, you have to be this, but that's not true. And so I also, you know, this is not a project of nationalism. Like, this is not a project celebrating, you know, whatever passports or anything like that. I really try and sort of it's not like a project for claiming, you know, nation state loyalty or anything like that. So yeah, just, which is why, you know, Indonesian heritage, it's still limiting, but I say Indonesian heritage rather than like Indonesian, because, you know, I really want to open it up, and, you know, it's for people who don't know how to speak Indonesian, who are fluent in Indonesian, who have never stepped foot in Indonesia, who were born in Indonesia but then emigrated elsewhere. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. And I love your point about like taking that question immediately about identity outside of the material cultures that we often associate with our country of heritage. So I really love your answer. And now I'm gonna open it up for Nicole to ask the next question in the next spread.
Yes, for sure. So I'm so sorry for all these technical difficulties. But our next spread is what kind of seeds specifically are you planning or would like to plant? So for example, you could be mutual aid, donating mutual aid, dedicating a certain amount of your income monthly, or it can be like a personal learning that you want to start doing. Any accomplishment or goal you want to each reach by the end of this year. We only have like a few more months, or anything you want to amplify, an issue that you resonate with, that you want to speak on more. Or you can also reflect or doodle on what you needed when you first started your advocacy work or your journey in civic engagement, or maybe something that you need now. You can think about planting those seeds. Yeah, give everyone a second to brainstorm there too. So I have a question for Daphne now, but I have a question for Teta in the next slide. So for this one, my question for you was, how did you go about organizing and fundraising for your zines, as this was how like you helped bring your project to life and carry it out?
Right. Yeah. So in terms of fundraising, we ended up we decided to do a print of the zine, and we worked with a really awesome local printer, Relevant Press, to do risograph printing. I guess I can talk really briefly about that. Risograph printing it's like a really cool, like, I don't know, not really lo-fi, but just like different way of printing where you can use like pure inks to really get these cool like overlays. And so we decided to go down that route. It's a very special, you know, way of printing that has this cool kind of, oh yeah, here we go. These, whoops, I don't know if you can see. There we go. Just a really cool way of showing the images as well. I actually have another zine here, which I don't know if you guys follow Wing on Woe. They've got this amazing zine on porcelain, but they've got multicolor zines, and it's, so yeah, you can select how many colors you want to use. In our case, we ended up using 2. But anyways, so I bring this up because our zine printer very generously donated prints of our zines so that we could fundraise as much as we could. And I would highly recommend, if you guys are doing this for a fundraiser of any sort, check out any local printers. They may be offering BIPOC, you know, organizations or artists they may be donating some printing, which we were so grateful to have Irrelevant Press and their generous donation. And so anyways, we went about doing that. We collaborated with several artists. For this particular fundraiser, it was all volunteer efforts. Since then, we've had other fundraisers where we have been able to pay all of our artists, and that's something that we're very much that's like a big goal of ours, is to support artists. And so so moving forward, all of our fundraisers, we've paid artists, and we will continue to support them for the work that they do. But yeah, if you're able to rally some of your friends to contribute to something, that's I think that's one of the best parts about working on a zine, is it can be so collaborative. And so if you organize all of those components, we then put the zine out on online to, I guess we're selling the print versions, and then we did have digital versions for a donation as well. And then the campaign went for a couple weeks. We actually sold out of our print zines like within an hour, which is pretty crazy. And we had to ask our printer for another to double our run. And so that was an amazing kind of, oh, people care about this, and they were willing to support our cause. And so that was really, really touching to see. And so we put it out on our e-commerce platform, and then we also had a GoFundMe running simultaneously, so folks who donated to the GoFundMe could get a digital copy of the zine. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. We actually just put our online shop back up I think last week actually. So if we do have a few copies left of the zine, if anyone wants to purchase, and all of the proceeds from the sales will go towards funding our programs and our work in the community. So yeah, just a little plug. And I put the link in there if anyone's interested. So
this might be a silly question, Daphne, but is the risograph printer like a normal printer or a special printer?
Yeah, it's a special printer, and it has different types of inks. I don't know the exact mechanics of it, but it's like an older school type printer. And it can only print like one ink at a time, basically. And so actually to make this, for instance, like here, let me pull open. So these photos, you actually have to give the printer 2 versions of the zine that are using the different colors. And so yeah, that's, or however many colors you're using, I guess. But yeah, it's a different type of printing. So, but yeah, super cool. Highly recommend, trying it out. And it can be, anything as small as like postcards to like posters, things like that. So.
Cool. And so do you have to give the people who print the zines like 2 different files or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can give them 2 different files. There are actually, so there are printers who can do it for you. And then there's also print shops that allow you to come in and do it yourself. So it's even cheaper, in that sense. And oftentimes they'll host like print workshops and how to do it. So yeah, highly recommend going out there and supporting your local printers. So
cool, fun, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for sharing. Oh, I also wanted to give a heads up to everybody that we're running up on the 30 hours. So if you've got to go, that's totally okay. But we'll have slides and recording available for you to catch up on your zine. But we'll hop right on to the next spread, and that is, how will you nourish these seeds to grow successfully? So it's kind of like breaking down your action steps to small things that you can handle to lead you in the right direction towards a successful harvest of your fruit that you want to grow. So for example, that could be following organizations on social medias. So you have, or you can see what upcoming events or teachings or videos, webinars that they have. That could be listening to those teachings or listening to podcasts, small actionable steps that you can do now to take you through then a year or two in your future. Give you some time to marinate on that thought.
Hello guys, as we are approaching the 7:30 mark, oops, I sent that message to everybody in the chat. I would like to ask if we can take a photo, like a screenshot of the Zoom room, possibly before more people start to leave. Is that possible? And then we can go right back into the questions and like the creation space. All right, all right. Oh no. 1 second. All right. I'll give everybody 5 seconds to hold up their in progress zines. And okay, give some another moment. I am here all day. Oh my God, my hair is sticking up the wrong way. It's okay. Is that everybody? All right. And ready in 3, 2, 1. Oh, it's making me snip it. We love MacBooks very, very much. All right. Capture 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, so cute. Got it. All right, you guys are good.
Hey, Brian, the metallic against the dark color looks so good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of like dark mode in general.
Oh, I like that. That's some UX right there. I was going to say, Hillary, your paperback zine is so aesthetic.
TY.
All right. Thank you all. I'm going to give it back to Nicole.
Yay, all right, I have a question for Teta. I know like you touched on it earlier already with your like creation. Whoa, are you able to hear me? Okay, all right, yeah, I know you touched on like your creation process earlier, but do you want to like expand even more on like what you decided to include in the zine and like your process with that?
Sure. I try to like include sort of like a range of interviews. I myself gravitate towards like artists, writers, and things like that. So in the zine, I want to include, as many different people as possible. And I also like try to include people from like different parts of the world. So Buah Zine is not just like focused on the diaspora in the US. We also feature people who are in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Australia, in Hong Kong. So like, yeah, just trying to represent as, or to I don't know, show as many people as possible that Buah Zine has so far interviewed. So yeah, and then just trying to pick out sort of like, oh, you know, what sort of art or, you know, whether it's books or music, what can I recommend to people and get them more interested and maybe, you know, reading books by Indonesian authors or listening to music from Indonesian musicians. So yeah.
Ooh, really love that, like amplifying the many voices of our communities. Love, love. Yes, decentering the US.
So how
Yes,
do you like find and reach out to these creators all over the world? Like, is it through social media or do they find you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's usually through social media. So my background is journalist, so I have a lot of experience sort of just like, you know, cold emailing people if I come across their work. Like if I read an article somewhere or I saw a video on YouTube featuring them, I'll try and look them up and see if they'd be interested in being featured. And yeah, for the most part, people are pretty willing to, you know, to speak with me and, you know, talk about heritage and their work and things like that, because it's pretty there's a lot of interesting conversations, I think, that come out of our interviews. So yeah, mostly the social media and the internet, but there is some word of mouth where, like, you know, somebody who has read the zine or who knows me is like, oh, I know Indonesian person, I think, you know, they would be interested in talking to you. And also like past interviewees will recommend like their friends or other people they know. So
love that, love that. All right, if everyone's cool, we're going to hop right on to our, I think our back cover. So this one will be self-care. So to grow ourselves and to grow, like, nourish our goals, we need to rest and take care of ourselves. So this last back cover page is like some self-care notes for yourself. Maybe you can include some motivational phrases or quotes, or like put together a little recipe for success along your journey. Some more time to marinate on that for you. I have this question open to both Teta and Daphne. So this one is, you have probably run into some challenges along the way while creating your zines or carrying out your projects. So how did you like go about that, or what did you do to care for yourself or your team when you were experiencing those? And can I state that first, if that's okay?
Oh, did you say me or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yes. So I definitely, it's still a work in progress, but I definitely put like a lot of pressure on myself to like put out a lot of, you know, put out interviews, put out playlists and try and, you know, do a lot of this work. But I have, you know, this is something that I do in my free time. I still have like a day job. So, you know, I am learning to be more forgiving and gentler with myself if I don't make up these goals, because it's not like anyone is sort of like knocking at my door or like you know, haranguing me to, hey, where's the zine or whatever. So it's definitely like me having to just like take a step back and be like, okay, you know, it's totally fine if you don't put out interviews weekly, if you can't set up this stuff because you're very tired and there's only, you know, 24 hours of a day. So you shouldn't, you know, be up all night, like working on a thing that you have to, you know, go to work the next day. So it's just kind of like understanding that, and also asking for help when I can. Yeah.
Definitely. I can definitely resonate with the being hard on myself. But yeah, I'll open up for to Daphne now.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, Theta. It's like, especially this is the way that we approached it. It was, you know, it was a fundraiser and it was mutual aid, and so what's tough is there's like a sense of urgency with everything, you know, around, you know, these kinds of issues. And but we also did have to push back the release date of our zine. We didn't announce it to anyone, so thankfully we didn't have that pressure of like, oh, we have to make that deadline. But we did end up moving it back. I think we were originally trying to release it for like the holiday season in 2020, but we pushed it to Lunar New Year, and that ended up actually working out even better for us. And so, and everyone was volunteering their time, their energy, and so yeah, we were, you know, okay. we were like willing to make sure that we were taking care of ourselves enough to be able to move this out, and yeah, the businesses were okay with it, and we continued to like share about them, you know, on social media regardless. And so yeah, it's tough. It's definitely a challenge to balance creativity and aid and all these things, but ultimately if you don't take care of yourself, it's going to be really challenging to do all of it anyway. So yeah.
Thank you both so much for describing some ways that you have taken on self-care, especially with creative work. I think that as creators, as artists, as community organizers, there's a lot of impetus to get everything done, to keep things moving, because of the work that you do is so important, personal, and within your communities. But giving yourself a little bit of grace, deep breaths and so forth, and you know, just understanding that maybe this can't happen today, but maybe tomorrow might be a better day. So really thank you both so much for answering all of our wonderful questions. Thank you, Nicole, for moderating, and Theta and Daphne for being guests to the Amplify Asian America first programs event this year. But now we're going to move on to a little bit of a share time for you guys to share your wonderful zines, and as we wrap up this event. Yeah, does anybody want to share their zines? This is a judgment-free zone where everybody is creative, and I've seen you all throughout the last couple of minutes create some really wonderful stuff I've seen in the pictures and so forth. Yeah.
I can share my zine. I'll share. I feel I'm gonna be very hard on myself, so I'll just share one page that I think turned out okay. So this is the what seeds do I want to plant, and I sort of like drew this like rudimentary tree, and then within it I sort of wrote, you know, what I wanted to do, and that is, you know, I want to plant the seeds for a stronger Indonesian diasporic community, you know, keep this archive going as much as I can, and you know, my ultimate dream or goal is to make it, you know, to have myself travel to places and meet people where they are, because there is actually quite a large, you know, quite a spread out Indonesian diasporic community, because of colonialism and everything. So I really want to like, one day just take the time to like meet the communities like where they are and learn more about it and really, I don't know, do more preservation of it. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Teta, for sharing that. And I really love your intention of keeping the archive going, being able to capture and preserve all of those stories, and such a wonderful tree. And very cool, very cool. Yeah. Does anybody else want to share? I'm very comfortable with silence.
I can go and
Priyanka?
share.
Oh,
I didn't get very far, but we're just calling mine Slice of Life, and I was going to focus on food because it got me thinking about it. So I was, I connect to my culture through food. Made a little mango here, and I was just trying to like thinking through it. Like participating in my own culture. I'm Indian American. It can feel fraught because a lot of the most mundane activities can feel political. And as I'm unlearning a lot of the stuff that, I took for granted, and just the implications of people who are not as privileged or don't have caste privilege, I can't do it mindlessly, but, food feels a little bit more accessible. And so I'm still trying to like unpack that. So I didn't get too much further, but I'm trying to make like a little placemat out of construction paper.
oh my God, I love that. The weaving, the paper weaving is so wonderful. And everybody in the chat is like, wow, I very much resonate with that. But such a wonderful example. And thank you so much for sharing into this space. I hope that you can come back to it. And as zines are always growing and evolving with all pieces of art. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to let Dawn share as well.
Okay. Hello. So I'm just gonna show 2 pages, the cover and the first spread. So I titled mine Slice and Splice Webinar Roots and Growth. And I also added a sticker of a watermelon because fruits, and I have a bunch of like random stickers from like pen paling letters and stuff, and got some like off Etsy and stuff. Good to support, indie creators and artists and stuff on Etsy. Good website. So my first spread, it is environment we're starting in. So I added 2 stickers for this one as well. Boba, because why not? And Corona, because, well, I guess that kind of like represents my college experience. I just added some like various thoughts, like, how I have a mixture of like Vietnamese, Asian, American culture and heritage, that I surround myself like-minded people. And that, I've gone through like multiple transformations through college, starting off from like a very reclusive, like socially anxious like guy, not really involved in anything, to where I am now, like, and getting involved in a community, taking part in leadership, trying to do good for, like other people and just the community in general. So that is kind of the environment I kind of grew up in and have transformed over the years. And now, having graduated from college is kind of where I'm at now. But it is also a time of like, great upheaval, stress, decisions, and also distractions. I kind of drew a chibi right there of like one of my, one of the channels I do watch. Yes, it is kind of a little bit of a distraction, but it is also a hobby. And that is actually like it's a series of like Asian channels on YouTube, and they do a lot of awesome things. I really like them, but they're entertainers. So they're not like, they're not like community things, they're entertainers, but like, still, I love watching them. They're awesome. They bring together a great community in a different sense. But yeah, that is basically my first spread.
Thank you, Dawn, for sharing. I love the chibi. It's so cute. I definitely resonate with that. viewing things for entertainment, not necessarily for community engagement, but they're very important for self-care. And I'm looking forward to see the rest of your spreads at some other time. But yes, I'm gonna pass it off to Hillary and then we're gonna wrap up. Thank you guys for staying this long.
Yes. So I have my very tall, oh wow, there we go. I have my very tall zine, and I decided to write about my journey with Chinese tea. And so it says my roots for Chinese tea here. And then I started out, I guess it's more of like a past tense thing, but I started out with like me feeling sad, separated by my family. I felt really connected to my heritage. I'm Chinese American, but less so like grounded in it. And so then this is sort of like my intention. I was like, I want to set intention in the practice and philosophy of something called Hua Cha, which is like living tea. And that's like the idea that we're connected to each other and the earth. And also we're not so far apart. And so, yeah, every day I made tea. And then I wrote drink tea because I got a little tired at the end. So that's my zine.
Oh my gosh, it looks so wonderful. And like I love the narrative about like your family and like being by yourself. Also your artistic style. It's so wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And if you post it somewhere, it's definitely a work of art. Yes, I'm gonna lead it over to Camly to finish off the webinar.
Sure. If we can get the last slide, but really we just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this great conversation and co-creation. I hope everyone got something out of it, whether it was education about zines or about the process of Daphne's and Theta's zines, or just making their own. So we really appreciate it. I would like to plug Amplify Asian America is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and here's our website. There's also the handles for Buah Zine and Cut Fruit Collective. So please go follow them to keep up with their great work. And we shared a lot of resources, and we'll be sure to get those links and follow up with an email to everyone that registered and participated. And this recording of the webinar will also become online soon enough. So I want to give a big thank you, especially to Marjorie and Nicole, the programs team, and our guests, Daphne and Theta. We really appreciate your time, everyone. Yeah, have a good night. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.